Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us today at the University of East Anglia. We're in the Thomas Paine Study Centre, and hopefully we've got people joining us online, but we have a few link issues, so hopefully they will be joining us. My name's Eleanor Milligan. I'm the coordinator for the Joyce Morris Early Years Literacies Forum, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our third public lecture. So if you haven't seen our other lectures, they're all recorded and they're all kept on our website, so do feel free to go back and see those. So we are delighted to have a number of organisations that have supported this public lecture today. The Travellers Times, Tactic and UKLA have all worked very hard to promote it, and we're hosted today with the ROMLIT research team. I would like to just remind you that within your link and your directions, we have pointed out that there will be a Q&A session. There's also a Padlet where you can share your views. Please don't add anything to the Padlet that you don't want us to use. We'll use that for research purposes, to improve our public lectures. The ROMLIT team will obviously engage with your comments as well. As it's all collected anonymously, we can't remove anything afterwards. So the Padlet is an interactive communication tool. If you haven't been to one of our hybrid events before, do check it out. So the link was in everyone's joining email, and we also have this QR code if you haven't yet connected. You'll find in that Padlet, there are a number of columns. Information about the event today. There's a feedback section for questions. Each of these columns, at the top you'll see a translucent edition sign. If you click on that, it'll give you a comment tab for you to type in, and then you just click publish, and one of our research assistants here will respond to your comment or your question, and they'll pose it to Richard later. Okay, so on with the main business of the day. I am delighted to introduce you today to Richard O'Neill, acclaimed storyteller, educator, published author, playwright, animation scriptwriter, lecturer, workshop leader, and all-round good egg, from what I understand. He engages with various institutions, schools, universities, leading museums, cultural spaces all across Europe. He was born into a traditional nomadic Roma family and brought up in various locations across the north, deeply influencing his work and inspiring him to leverage the power of storytelling in various formats to promote inclusion and acceptance and community cohesion. So I'd like you all to join me today and give him a big round of applause. Richard O'Neill MBE.
Thank you very much. I'll take my clicker. Just a warning, these clickers don't always work for me, so when I click, I might have to use that. Before we get started, there's a couple of things I need to say. The first thing is, all of the stuff I'm going to talk about tonight is my own stuff, so I'm not representing any organisation. So a few people are probably thinking, oh, is he going to say something controversial? I don't think so, but I'm going to speak from the heart, because I think that is the best way to do these things. Other stuff, you can read it, but if I'm here and talking to you, I'd like to just speak from the heart. And it's all my own words. So before we get started, if you're in the ROMLIT team, would you put your hand up so everybody can see who you are? So you have a look around, you'll see the ROMLIT team, quite a lot of people. And when we talk about the work we're doing with ROMLIT, then if I'm talking about it, then it's obviously not just me. There's a whole team. And can I just say a huge thank you to the team here as well, Eleanor, for sorting everything out beforehand so it looks as good as it does now. Thank you. So let's get started. There's a couple of words I'm probably going to use this evening. The first one will be deficit. I'll use that word maybe a few times. And the other word will be transform. Okay? So let me talk about this kind of stuff. Okay. Campfire to classroom to campus. So when I was a little kid, and I wasn't born in Victorian times, as some of the kids in school think, but it was the 1960s, and it seems like a long, long time ago, because it is. But we didn't have television. We didn't have that kind of stuff. So I lived in quite a closed community. There was a lot of Romanes spoken. A lot of the Romani language was spoken along with English. A lot of the older people spoke a lot more of it. And my life was just about that. I didn't know I was any different. And here's the thing. I love schools, and teachers and teaching assistants are some of my favorite people. I think mainly because the media don't like you any more than they like us. That's the first thing. I think we bond. But you do amazing work, and it often doesn't get the praise that it should. So I was a little kid, and I was 4, and I had no real understanding of the outside world out of my community, which was very nomadic. And when I was 5, I had to go to school, right? That's kind of the law, because we were living in a house, well, in the yard of a house at that time. And I had to go to school. And it was a huge culture shock for me going to school, because it was very regimented. And we sat on these desks and we had to do this stuff. But one of the really good things about going to school was the teacher, this lovely teacher, she taught all the children in that class to write something, And can anybody guess what that was? What did she teach us to write? It was 2 words she started with. Anybody, any ideas? It was our name. Yeah, a few people there going, oh yeah, we used to teach that, we used to do that. But it was my name. And it doesn't sound a lot, but for a child who'd never seen that, I could read before I went to school. I taught myself to read when I was 4. I got obsessed with books, but I couldn't write. And this lovely teacher taught me how to write. And when I saw my name written down for the first time that I'd written, I'm like, oh, wow, I exist. I'm a real boy. And that was transformational for me. That teacher had transformed me into a writer. And that, for me, was absolutely incredible. Now, going on a little bit later when I was in school, and I didn't quite get the idea of rules. Rules seemed quite arbitrary. I wouldn't have known the word arbitrary back then when I was 5 or 6. But the rules seemed a bit odd to me. We had something called playtime. Do you remember playtime? They call it break now, which is odd, because like you're at work. But it should be playtime. They should have play. They used to have workers' playtime. Back in the 1950s, if you worked in a factory, you used to have playtime, which would be good, bring back. But anyway, I was at school, and I longed for my playtime every day. I think it was something like 10:15 till sort of just gone 20:30. 20 minutes, I think we got. And one day, it was raining when it was playtime. And the teacher said, oh, well, we'll just carry on with our work. We're not going outside. Because I think at that time, even today, I think children aren't waterproof. I mean, if you've got children, you can test them with a watering can or a bucket. Just, they're waterproof. But now, so then I looked at the clock, and I was trying to work out, because I could tell the time by then. And after 20 minutes had gone, 25, 30 minutes, the sun came out. And I said, please, miss, can we go out and play now? And she said, no, playtime's gone. And I thought, where's it gone? Playtime can't have gone. But that was the rule. We couldn't change it to have it 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, because I don't know what would happen. The world would end or something. But it's that flexibility that we had in our community. If it was raining, then we would go inside. And as soon as the sun come out, we'd do the job then. It's that kind of flexibility. So I wanted just to give you that understanding of, in Traveller Gypsy community still, there is that flexibility. There's that huge amount of flexibility. And we're not trying to break the rules. We're just trying to do it sensibly. It seems more sense to go and do your work when it's raining and then play out. So let me just read this for you. There have been civilizations without the wheel, but none without story. And you can check that out yourselves. Have a think about that. Every civilization has had story. Before people could write, they had stories. We have all these stories that go back thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Creation stories, all kinds of things. But what I say is, who tells the stories? And why and how? And I think until now, where we are, we haven't told our own stories. People from Gypsy Roma and Traveller and other communities have not told their stories. And I always question, why are we telling the stories? How we tell the stories? And who is telling the stories? And I think that's why I'll keep referring back to Romlit on this, because actually the children And the communities, the parents, the grandparents, the carers, they are helping to tell their story with their pictures and their words. And that, to me, is very, very freeing. Flipping narratives. That's one of the things that we spend a lot of our time doing, because if you do a search for Gypsy Roma Traveller, then you will find lots and lots of narratives, and most of them will be wrong. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to flip those narratives. We're trying to turn them around and show you something different and tell you our truth. Now I've got a provocation for you. Let me just ask you this one question. And people say to me, well, they know about gypsies and travellers, and they know about this and they know about that. They know the culture and they watch the TV programmes. Well, I watched a TV programme called Only Way is Essex, so I know everything about people from Essex. But let me ask you this question. I don't want anybody to answer it, put your hand up or anything, but just think about it. How many of you here sitting tonight, how many of you, if you're watching this online, have got friends, colleagues, neighbours from a different ethnic minority group or a different background? How many of you have got friends, colleagues from a gypsy or a Roma or a traveller background? And often, it's very few. And if we don't work alongside people, if we don't live alongside people, if we don't have friends with people, we tend not to understand them, people. We tend not to connect with those people in the way that we should. That's me, when I was Harry Styles. And I was 8 back then. And again, that narrative was, traveller kids didn't go to school. I went to school. I had to. It was the law. My dad was running a business. I had to go to school, otherwise we would have been in serious trouble. And there I am with my school uniform, and it's summertime. I've got shorts on. And if Harry Styles, if you're tuned in, Harry, this is what you look like when you get the same age as me, okay? This is you in time. So, and we were living in the yard of a nice bungalow at that time. So stories for me are about connections. And I do like that idea of 7 stories, you know, and I think the 7 always seems to crop up, doesn't it? 7 days in a week. There are 7 stories. There are lucky 7. 7 is a big thing. So I just wanted to talk to you about stories, connections, and the 7 areas of learning. Now, has anybody not heard of the word oracy? You're all looking a bit glazed. I have to be honest with you, this is maybe the controversial part. I'm a bit oracy'd out, because everybody keeps telling me about oracy, and they say, and I say, is that speaking and listening? They go, no, it's oracy. I say, it sounds a lot like storytelling. They go, no, it's oracy. We will come to oracy in a little while. But the thing is, are we listening? Are we actually listening? Or are we just talking about stuff all the time? Are we saying, you must do oracy, you must do oracy, you must do this, you must do that? Or are we listening? One of the major components of this project we've been doing in schools is listening. I always say when I'm teaching storytelling skills, whether that's to teachers, to children, to young people, to leaders, a storyteller is more of a listener than a teller. The more you listen, the more you'll know. It's as simple as that. So part of this project has been listening to the teachers. What is useful for you? Listening to the children, listening to the parents, listening to the grandparents. It's about listening rather than doing stuff at people or doing stuff to people. As a community or communities, we've had stuff done to us for years. Sometimes had stuff done with us, but rarely have we taken the lead, and that's what's been really interesting about Romlit. We have this wonderful group of people from all different backgrounds, and they are listening. For me, story's a bridge, and it's not just about getting to the other side. It's about meeting in the middle and crossing over together. Stories are bridges. We build stories like we build bridges. And that's what we've been doing with Romlit. We've been building connections. We've been using story as that connector. We're connecting teachers. We are reconnecting some parents and grandparents with school. We have one particular grandparent who drew a picture for their grandson And their grandson was so proud of this, he brought it into school. And now that picture is actually in the book. And the children are pointing it out. And the grandparent is overjoyed because that grandparent is now in school through their artwork. That connection across the generations. That's what we're trying to do. Cross over into the new together. So what is story? Well, to me, it's everything. And it was everything when I was a child. I was fascinated by adults. I was fascinated by the things they said. I was fascinated by the different ways they said it. I was fascinated by the different languages that people spoke. And I still am. For me, it's the beating heart of all communication. You can ask me any question about communication and I'll say story. You talk to me about a job interview. People say, I'm getting ready for a job interview. I say, well, make sure you tell a really good story about you. They say, I'm going speed dating. Same thing. Don't use your CV, though. And for me, it's that head and heart. It's when we share a story. A lot of people share their stories with me. They sometimes will sit down and then will tell me their story. And I think I'm honored with that because it's the most precious thing. When you share a story with somebody, you're sharing a part of you, and that person keeps that part forever. And that's what we're doing. Those children in the schools we're working will not forget what we've been doing. They will not forget the team going in there and working with them. Even if we didn't have a physical book, which we're going to have, they would not forget that. And I think storytelling is made up of more than words and actions. Way more. You can get somebody who can spout a story, you can read anything, but there's more to it than that. It's about culture. It's about environment. It's about representation. And it's about inclusion. And it's about love. It's about a love of words. We've had our children in schools. I like to give them a love of words. The more words you have, the more stuff you can write. The more words you have, the more you can explain yourself. I love finding out new words. Words are just the best thing ever. If you give a child a love of words, no matter what age they are, 2, 3, 4, whatever, we're talking about early years here, they just run with it. They love it. And I say to them, when you learn a new word, it makes your mouth go a bit funny, and your mouth loves learning new words. It sends your face off. For me, it's so important that we have that. And story connects. Let me share with you a little story from yesterday. I was at a school yesterday afternoon with the team. And at the end of the day, because our film crew here wanted to film all the different classes, and they definitely wanted to film the reception class. They wanted to film them because they're just fabulous. Reception class, they're just the most wonderful people on the planet. You know, they not only come out with such random things that, you know, when people say, oh, AI will take over, no, it won't. Reception kids will take over in creativity, if anybody. They just come out with the most amazing stuff. So we had these wonderful reception children come out to an outdoor classroom. And there's a blackboard there. And they're all sat down on little bits of wood, logs and stuff. And they said, well, I talked to them about the book, about how we've moved on with the book, and so on and so on. And then I was talking about the blackboard. One of the children said, what's that? I said, well, it's a blackboard, and you write on it with chalk, and then you can just rub it off. And then I kind of made a voice as if the blackboard was talking, which they thought was hilarious. And that's why I love them. They think I'm hilarious, right? And other people just look at you and go, what? But reception job, oh, that's the funniest thing ever. So I said, anyway, and then they just sat and we chatted a little bit. I said, you know, maybe that's our next book about talking blackboard. And the teacher said, right, who's ready to go back in? And none of the child moved. None of them moved. They just sat there. And the teacher said, come, who's ready to go back in? And they had a sort of a sit-in. They did not want to move. So I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, look, let's make a deal. I'll do a couple more minutes about this blackboard story, shall I? And then you can go in. And they're like, yeah, okay. So I did a couple more minutes. And I said, right, okay, it's time to go in now. And they sat there. And I'm thinking, we're getting to the end of the day. Parents are going to come, because parents always come early, don't they? And these children don't want to go in. Anyway, I said, right, okay, right, we really need to go. So I had to go into the school, and they followed me into the school. And I stood out of the way as they went in. And then, as the last one went in, the teacher who was following behind, she says, I can't believe this. She said, 5 minutes before we came out, half of them didn't want to come out. The other half were crying and wanted to go to sleep. That's the power of story, isn't it? And blackboards. You know, if you want to get some attention from your early years, get rid of that electronic stuff you've got. Get a blackboard and some chalk. But it's just, those things you just can't create. They have to happen. And I think what story does, it creates that environment for the magic to happen. And that's what the magic is. Now, you know I said about the word transform when I started off? This is what you teachers and you teaching assistants do. You transform stuff. When you've got electric, you know, and you could look into transformers, how it works, I don't know. But you've got a huge amount of current sometimes coming into something, and then the transformer will transform it into less, so your toothbrush or whatever you're using doesn't blow up. It also can take the electricity up, so it will be right for the thing that it's going to power. But that's what you teachers and you teaching assistants do. You take all of that energy, because that's what children are. For me, children are just energy. And when people say, oh, they're really bad behaved, these, or the behavior, and I say, it's not behavior, is it? It's energy, kind of in the wrong place. We just need to transform it. And that's what story can do. It allows you, brilliant teachers, and that's what you do. You take all of that there and you transform it into something else. And that, I'll come back to that a little bit later. But story is really good for transforming energy into something positive. So 7 is important, I think. We've got 7 days in a week. We've got 7 wonders of the world. We've got, they say that you can remember 7 things. That's the capacity. Although if you've upset somebody, I think they can remember a lot more than that in my experience. There's a whole list of things that I've done wrong. 7 notes in a traditional major or minor scale. I wouldn't know about that because I'm not a musician. 7 colours in the rainbow. 7 is the most popular number. If you ask people what's their lucky number, what's their favourite number, it's 7. And we've got 7 stories. The 7 stories are really interesting, actually. I think there probably are more from different cultures around the world. But we'll say that there is Overcoming the Monster, Rags to Riches, The Quest, Voyage and Return, Comedy, Tragedy, Rebirth. And I always have to read things like this because I have ADHD and I can't even remember 7. I can probably remember 1. And then I remember it on my drive home perfectly. So I thought I'd better write it down. But here's the interesting thing. I never forget any of my stories. I've got hundreds of stories, and I never forget any one of them. I think that's just because the power of story, actually. 7 areas of learning: communication and language development, personal, social, and emotional, physical, literacy, maths, understanding the world, expressive arts and design. RomLit has done every one of those. But where's the maths in it? You have to do a word count when you're making a book. Otherwise, the thing will be all over the place. You have to count your words. We had a wonderful session, and I'll talk about it a little bit later on. But we had a wonderful session of teaching the children about the process. Because I think when our children watch TV or they see something on YouTube, everything is done quickly, perfectly. They start off here with a pile of junk, and then within 10 minutes it turns into a supercar. But actually, in real life, the process is way longer, but there is fun in the process. Process can be fun, and you learn a lot from the process. So in this process of doing the RomLit book, we just started with ideas. Then we eventually got to the point where we had to edit it. Has anybody ever done an online edit session with a head teacher who is brilliant at grammar? That was a tough morning. That was a tough morning for me, because I'm just not good at grammar. But we had this wonderful session where we had reception, year 1, year 2, from the 3 schools and the teachers and 1 head teacher online, and we were editing the book, finding different words, new words, getting rid of certain bits because they didn't make sense. And we had reception children editing. with purpose, real purpose. And at the end of that, the head teacher said, this has been the most brilliant session. It has been the best purposeful writing for a purpose I've ever seen. And that's just because we allowed the reception kids to do it. They know what sounds good, they know what doesn't work, but they also can learn about grammar and about punctuation and all of that kind of stuff in a fun, interesting, productive way. They saw the reason for it. And when I talk about Gypsy and Traveller, and I talk about a lot of the children I work with, we often will ask, what's the point of doing that? What's the point of doing maths? What's the point of doing this? What's the point? Why do I have to learn to put that little thing at the end of that? What's the point? When you show children the point of something, then they get it. Because otherwise it's just us and telling them again, why? Because in the mind, you will have probably been like this as a child. You might not have voiced it, but you might have thought, why? Why are they asking me to do that? And when you explain to a child why, sometimes they understand, sometimes they don't. But it's so important that they actually are part of a real process. And that, for me, was one of the strengths of ROMLIT. Now, if you have a look up here, there's a whole load of different pictures of children and projects that I've worked with over time. And when I'm working with children, as I said to you before, what we do is we do something called a live project. That means we have a structure, we have an outline, but within that, there is space to move, to grow, to change, to listen to the children and to go with that. So I do some woodwork sometimes, and I teach children and sometimes, years ago, they used to be horrified. My grandson, my eldest grandson is 12 now, going on 13, and we went to an event at a library, and he was helping me to put these cushion things out. And this woman came in a bit early, and she was chatting with him, and I was talking about some of the wooden toys that we were going to use in the story. And I said, well, yeah, I made them, and I've been making stuff like that since I was a kid. And my grandson said, I've had an axe since I was 3. And this woman was horrified. And I said, quick, show your hands. show your hands. All intact, they're all there. But now, years ago, that used to be, people would be horrified about children having tools. But now, of course, we see that it's important. And when I was just doing woodwork for kids to do something interesting. But then teachers and teaching assistants would look at it and say, actually, it's doing this, it's doing this, it's doing that, it's doing that. A pen is a tool, a pencil is a tool. How we hold the tools is really good for how we hold the pencil, etc. And as you can see up there, we've got some, you see where it says skip higher? Then I had some blocks from pallets I was working with. And then with the children, we created this thing called the blockies, which are blocks of wood, and they're all characters. And it's very, very funny if you're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or you're a dad or a granddad. Because we had Jenny from the block at one point. We had Sheriff of Blockingham, which was a bit of a stretch, but it was a teacher, so I let it go. But we had we had Baby Block. We had, just about to see there, the green one is Blockily. I know. Listen, come on. It's funny. It's good, right? One of the other things I would say is in your favour, and it doesn't apply to most teachers and teaching assistants, is if you have grey hair, it seems to be a bit of a superpower. So that works very well. On a serious note, I do work with the intergenerational nursery up in Chester, where it's a nursery that's actually inside a care home. And the people who live in the care home, they come and work with the children every day. And there is something about that. And I would urge anybody who has a school, works for the school, to actually get some older people to go in, because there is that lovely intergenerationalness. And children sometimes do seem to listen a little bit more to people with grey hair. Told you it was a superpower. And I can see now a lot of people might go away thinking, oh, the best thing to do, I'll just have my hair done grey. They'll notice that because you won't have the wrinkles, you see. You've got to have the full kit. You've got to have everything. So we made a book with those children and the older people in that class, in that place as well. So for me, storytelling anywhere, whether it's outside, whether it's in a library, whether it's in a school, wherever it is It really, really works. It's a great leveler. Storytelling is a great leveler. But there's got to be fun. One of the most important lessons I learned growing up in my traveller family from my dad was, and we would sometimes be, it'd be snowing and we'd have to sort of do this outside and we'd have to fix this old vehicle or whatever it was. And my dad would say to me, listen, no matter what job you do, you're going to have to find the fun in it. And that was a real challenge for us, especially if it was a freezing cold day and you're getting firewood together or something like that. But that was an important lesson from our community. You have to find the fun. And that's one of the things that's been a survival. There's the word survival, and I use the word thrival. Most Gypsy Roma Traveller communities thrive. Wherever we've come from, whatever we do, we will thrive. And that's because of that attitude. And I think one of the things is, really important, is to have fun. But here's what I talked about earlier on. I'm looping back. Story does this. It doesn't go in a linear way. It's very zigzaggy, and it's like real life. School is very linear, and I get that it has to be in many ways, but storytelling isn't. It gives people the chance to have a little bit more freedom. Because, if you ever go to a pub after work, I bet your friend doesn't show you a PowerPoint like this. Do they? I bet they don't walk in and say, right, what do you like? Right, this is Julie's week. Julie, are you ready? Yeah, just get the tech right, yeah. This is Monday. And, it was a terrible day Monday. Car wasn't working. And here's a graph to show you how annoyed I was with Brian. And here's some stats. Look at that. The red ones mean Brian was in trouble. We just don't do that. What we do when we communicate with people, we probably say something in the pub like, I've had a terrible week. Started on Monday. Oh, no, hang on a minute. No, it didn't. Started on Sunday night. And we zigzag and we circle all over the place because that's how we communicate as humans. That's the best part of it. You see, this is the best part of the lecture for you, that last 2 minutes, because you're identifying with Julie and Brian. That's really important because that's about representation. Yeah? We're joking about it, but you feel seen because you think, yeah, I've been there. Yeah. Oh, and some of you are probably imagining what a PowerPoint in a pub would look like. That's creativity right there. Yeah? So there's got to be fun. Okay, let's go back to the little bit more serious thing that I talked about, which was deficit. One of the things that we must not do when we think about Gypsy, Roma, or Traveller kids, showman kids, anybody from travelling communities, is think about them in a deficit model. And think, oh my goodness me, travellers are coming to my school. What am I going to do? What do I have to do? What differences, what things do I have to change? Whereas if we actually think about it the other way round and think, actually, I've got some travellers coming to my school. What are they going to bring? They're going to bring all this stuff I've talked about. They're going to bring fun. They're going to bring a different way of speaking. They're going to bring a different way of thinking. They're going to bring a different way of talking. A different view on the world, which actually might benefit everybody. I get organisations who pay me to go to their organisation and teach them what I learned from my dad. Because they realise now, you might have seen people say, well, we need to have a circular economy. We invented that, you're welcome. And people say we need to recycle more. Well, we kind of invented that, you're welcome. We were the rag and bone people. So many things, positive things that have come out of traveller communities that we need to celebrate, which is what we're doing with the book, which is what we're doing with all of the work that gets done by our wonderful team. But we need to think about our children. What are those children bringing to us? What can that child teach us? And traveller children could teach us a lot. Some of them know more about horses than I've ever thought about in my life. They know so much, but if there isn't an opportunity for them to tell you about that knowledge, then we're all missing out. They're missing out, but all the other children are missing out as well. So they bring an ability. They're natural storytellers, most traveller kids. They bring that oracy. If you want oracy, they're bringing it for you. So we've got to get away from that deficit model of, what do we have to change now? What do we have to do? Oh, my goodness me, traveller kids. Thinking, well, what are they going to bring for us? This is Bar block sheep. We're back to blocks. Yes, I know. You're a bit obsessed with blocks, aren't you, Richard? I put a lot of work into these, I can tell you. And I didn't even paint that one. But I think sometimes having fun with children is going off-road, is taking a nursery rhyme and mucking about with it and showing them that you can do that. And you can have fun in a different way. They loved this. Bar, block sheep, have you any blocks? No, sir, only purple socks. I have no idea where that came from. That was with the reception kids in Leeds. And we were just mucking about, and it became one of their favourite things. So now, they are bilingual in nursery rhymes, because they have the real one, and they have this one. But actually, when we look at bar, black sheep, it makes no sense at all. Bar, black sheep, have you any wool? I mean, if I was a sheep, I'd be like, duh, yeah. I got a Sainsbury's, yeah, Sainsbury's, having any food? It's pretty much what we do, mate, yeah? So we have to, storytelling allows us, and working with different communities allows us to actually look at things anew and think, hang on a minute, why do we do that? What's that all about? Why does bar, black sheep not make any sense? It doesn't. It's pointless. Now, people get hung up about language and they say we have to speak correctly. I think you have to speak that people can understand, but you know, we've now got, I heard from my grandson that, because he played a lot of games and he would watch a lot of TV that was made in America, and he sounded a bit American. And he would come up to me and say, "What you doing, Granddad?" I said, "Well, we're not speaking American today, are we, son? We're speaking Northern," right? I had to give him a bit of a lecture on that. But I think we get a little bit hung up on the perfect way to speak. I think if you could be understood, that's the most important thing. And as listeners, it's about us listening to children, about how they speak, going where they are. That's what we get paid to do. No child gets paid to go to school, do they? No, I don't think so. We get paid to work with them, though. There was a kind of fighting that would not let me sleep. Methought I lay worse than the mutines in the bilboes. Any idea where that's from? It's not Lord of the Rings, by the way, if you're thinking Bilbo Baggins. Some of you made that connection straight away. That's how quick I am. I could spot it. Any idea where that's, what the heck is that about? Any idea? You'd have to Google it, wouldn't you? And before Google, you'd be stuck. Tonight, 11 o'clock, thinking, do I know anybody who does like Old English stuff? It's from Shakespeare. And the mutines in the bilboes are the people who would row the ships. They'd be down in the bowels of the ship. Yeah? Man try say he's better than me, tell my man shut up. That does sound like a 3-year-old getting a bit annoyed because they can't have their favourite toy. Any idea who it is? It is Stormzy. Now, the first one is Shakespeare and the second one is Stormzy, and people think they're both brilliant. They think they're amazing. I can't understand any of it. But it's very popular. So to me, that's what children are learning when they get older. They're learning that Shakespeare, and they're listening, whether we believe it or not. They're listening to Stormzy and other people on the radio. So I think the more words we give them, the more understanding, then the more... One of the things about storytelling does, it allows you to, as I said before, dissect stuff and challenge it a bit. One of the things we have to do is to do that. Right, I've been doing this for quite a long time now. And I've worked in this area for quite a long time, and particularly around Wisbech. I love Wisbech, one of my favourite places. It's like a different country. When you go to Finland, it should be the independent country because it's so different and beautiful. And I lived in a caravan there for 6 months in an apple orchard. I mean, the people knew I was there. I didn't just turn up. I had to pay rent. But it was the most wonderful, wonderful thing living there for 6 months, about 11, 12 years ago now. And we did this work with the nursery, and it was just absolutely fantastic. The teachers threw themselves in. Okay, now, this article here is 7 years old. And what I noticed when I went to pick my grandson up from school, my eldest grandson, was that there were quite a lot of grandparents picking their children up, doing the daycare, if you will. And when I was picking my girls up from school, their mother, then his mother, I should say, then there was one grandma in all of the people. And I said to the school, I said, look, there's a change in demographic here. Can you make sure that all of the grandparents get the information about whether they need a fancy dress for the next day? Because I was caught out with that. And can you make sure that the grandparents get the information about what's happening at school? Because we're really involved, because we're picking these children up. So for me, that's that intergenerational thing. That's the things that we should be looking at. Has the demographic changed? How do we work with that? And it's the same if you've got lots and lots of parents who are from different backgrounds. Have they had a bad experience at school themselves? Because if you have, you might not want to come in for a parents' evening. You might not want to come in for that coffee morning. Romlit, and I know in particular Rebecca, managed to get a whole load of parents in who'd never been into the school before. I think when we started off, we ended up in one school getting one dad coming in. I think he was sent as a kind of a scout to see whether it was any good, and he was go back and tell everybody else. But it's so important to get our parents in and to get our grandparents in. We have to look at the demographic. So this is just some work. I'll just read you the little bits out of this. It's about storytelling in the intergenerational setting in the northwest of England. Now, I don't want to spoil the whole vibe tonight for people listening to this, watching this at home or from the office, but I have to mention the word Ofsted. Now, look at that. It's gone. You could see people go, oh, yeah? But you know what? They love this kind of stuff. They love the work that we're doing. How do I know that? Because of how they have mentioned it in their reports in the intergenerational nursery, how they have mentioned it in a school down in Birmingham that we're working with, how they have mentioned it in a school that we're working in Bradford with. All of this reaching out to parents, all of this working with all children. And I would say, if your Traveller, Gypsy, Roma children feel included and are doing well in your school, that is a good litmus test for how your school is. Because they are probably the most different in many ways. You can see now why they don't let me illustrate my own picture books. But I was working with a child who I didn't know in the reception class, who had only been in the country a week and he only spoke Russian. And I was telling a story. And he loved the bouncy bits of it. It's about a cat that gets stuck in a tree. And I said to the children, I said, do you mind if I tell that same story again? Because I think this boy here really enjoyed it and maybe we can go a bit slower. And I quickly drew these pictures so he could have it. And he just had the best time. And he was soon saying 3 words after that. He knew tree, he knew cat, and he knew jump. Story, I can't overemphasize how powerful it is. Okay, how do we make our stories relational to all of our children? They see these every day, but you never see these in picture books. I talk about them in my stories. I'll say, I was in Home Bargains. And I went here and I went there. Your children's stories from the weekend will say something like, we went to the Harvester. And if this is online, there are other pub chains available. We went to Asda, we went here, we went there. That should be in our conversations. They should be in our stories because children then can relate. Now, I know some people like to go to Waitrose, but if you only ever talk about Waitrose, then it excludes a lot of our children. If you only talk about restaurants, then it excludes a lot of our children who like a good old pub lunch. So it's so important that our stories have relational things in them. The relevancy of what we do is really, really important. Imagine having a sense of wonder about the everyday and about yourself where you live. Most children, when they watch TV or they're watching YouTube, everything is happening somewhere else. Everything exciting is happening somewhere else. But actually, the most exciting things are happening all around us. I was walking in a little village in Wisbech the other night after being at school. I was walking through this fairly ordinary village, and there was a gap between the houses, and when I looked through, there was a field of daffodils. I just had to take a photograph of it. The yellow of the daffodils and the blue of the sky, and the sky is so big here. Incredible. So that's what we should be talking about with our children, inspiring them to have this idea of wonder about where they live, but about who they are. All of the history of the bits and pieces I've told you about Gypsy Roma Traveller people and being involved in recycling, being involved in all of that kind of stuff, it's so important. This is a book called The Homeward Horse, and we did this for a university in Bradford and Leeds. And there's a big community up in Bradford on a social housing estate, and it has about 10,000 people on this estate, and it's a bit cut off from the city centre because they built it on the outskirts in the 50s and 60s. But there's a horse culture on that estate. There are horses everywhere. They've made about 3 films about it. You're driving along and there's black and white horses tethered, and they're outside the school. These kids see them every day. Most of them have got a horse, or they've got a relative who's got a horse. So we did the story about horses because it's so relational to them, and it's where they live. And for once, it's not somebody complaining to the council that the horse is on this piece of land. It's actually saying, you are good people. This is a great place. It is available for free. Download that, actually. If you just type that in, the Homeward Horse, you could just go to the Activity Bus website and you can download it free. There's no charge for that. Why story? Because stories, the stories that you hear about yourself are powerful. When I was a kid growing up, we would hear people, and my dad had it shouted at him when he was a kid and older, dirty gypsies. Nobody in my family was ever dirty, but the narrative that you hear all the time gets you maybe to think that you might be. The stories that you hear about yourself become your internal monologue. Teachers, you're brilliant. Teaching assistants, you're brilliant. But the media tells you you're not. And you hear this narrative that children, all these children leaving school at 11 who can't read and write. I've been working in school for 20 years. Unless there's been some kind of serious problem with a child, I've never met a child in mainstream school who at 11 couldn't read or write. Never met one. Maybe you have, but I haven't. But that's a narrative that keep putting out all of the time. It becomes your internal voice and your narrative. And they can be barriers to that learning. So when we say children hear that gypsies and travellers don't write books, gypsies and travellers don't go to university, gypsies and travellers don't do this, well, they do. There's been a recent TV programme about gypsies and travellers who actually didn't want a university-educated person on there because it wouldn't fit their narrative. Have a look at the narratives that get told about you, about me, about everybody, because they are barriers to learning. People say certain communities aren't interested in coming to events at school. They absolutely are. Here we are in Rotherham, working with children from lots of different communities. And people say, no, those people won't come. Those people don't do that. Their religion forbids it. Absolute rubbish. It's just a narrative that somebody has read from somewhere or somebody's passed on to somebody else, and on it goes. Absolutely nonsense. What storytelling does and what we've been doing with Romlit, and I think the adults in Romlit and the children, teachers, adults, everybody, I think it's been a really good example of communication and collaboration. And I think that's why it's worked. We've had the most amazing team working together. Oh no, We're back to oracy again, aren't we? I thought I'd cancelled that out of there, but it sort of crept in. So it's essential that all children receive quality first teaching of speaking and listening skills through a curriculum tailored to their needs. Oh, that sounds a bit like what I was saying. Oh, I'm interested now. The English subject report states that the pupils need opportunities to practice, refine, and apply speaking and listening skills in a range of different contexts and for a range of different audiences. Oh, we've done that. Once a thorough curriculum for oracy is in place, teachers will be more skilled. Oh, yeah, of course, so they weren't skilled before, but they are now. That's good, okay. And confident in assessing pupils' language and communication needs and deciding whether further intervention is required. Ofsted states that teachers often attribute pupils' weaknesses in speaking to a lack of confidence rather than realizing that they, whatever. So confidence is key. We've seen children's confidence grow in the project. That's what storytelling does. And actually, when it says here, articulate worthwhile contributions, that's so important. We have had some children who've got small voices, we've got children who have got big voices, we've got children who have contributed in a small way, but they've still contributed. Everybody has contributed. Some say that oracy has been positioned as a progressive linguistic concept that opposes deficit thinking, but that the underlying logics remain the same. Others say that developing the sector of oracy must engage with and unpick the underlying narrative of linguistic deficit. The history of oracy is very, very interesting. I haven't got time to go into it tonight, but do Google it, because it does come from, in my opinion, a deficit model. Because it assumes that way back in the 1960s, these working class children and others, they needed people like who could speak properly to teach them. And play. That's what we're doing. We're playing. This is my grandson, the eldest one, right? He's a bit interesting. I love football. He doesn't really like football, so we have to come to a compromise where he invents a weird game where I have to kick the ball at him on the scooter. And I'm sure people watching thinking, oh, what a terrible, terrible person. He's using this child as target practice, and he's way too old to be playing football anyway. But, you know, play, get him out on the swing in the woods, and it's all good. Writing is letting words out to play. We're being playful when we're telling stories. We're having fun. I was talking to you before about our imaginary pub PowerPoint. We're just letting our imaginations go and we're having fun. That's what it's all about. Then people say, well, but all this woodwork stuff that you do, what's that got to do with it? Well, word work and woodwork are very similar. We use tools, we use pencils, we use pens to write, we use hammers, we use nails to build things with wood. There's a process, we have to put stuff together, and it has to look okay, and it has to work. That's what we do with a sentence. Same type of thing. Get people doing that, and we're having fun. And we've got adults coming out and helping us as well. Making wonderful things to take up to the woods, and then telling stories about them, and then writing about them. So, I'm back to oracy again, because it's, yes, I know, you're getting a bit boring, Richard, but, well, you know, here we go. Oracy isn't really new. It's been a cornerstone of learning and communication for years. Storytelling, after all, is the original practice of structural speak and connection. And certain communities have always had it at the heart of their communication. We'll take that one. And had a bit of fun with this, and some people didn't take it the right way, but hey, this is probably the controversial bit. I wrote this. All right, Harrison, can you use the word oracy in a sentence? On Thursdays after football, I see my mum, or I see my dad first, depending on who finishes work earliest. And I'm sure people who are, you know, big in oracy will find that funny as well. Because we've got to take a joke, haven't we? We've got to. We must not approach oracy from a deficit model, though, because we should bring it from a linguistic diversity. The goal shouldn't be to correct or homogenize a student's way of speaking. Instead, oracy should help students feel confident in their authentic voices. And that's what we've been doing. I love the accents around here. I love the way children speak English when they have it as a second language. I love it because it makes me think, and it makes those words go in much deeper. And it makes me think about, that actually would be a better way to say it. Yeah? And it's really interesting because people keep telling me, they keep saying, what you should do, you should watch this program called Bluey. And I got a bit confused because there was a detective program from the 70s I watched with my mum. And I thought, how can you learn from that? It's terrible. But I think we will now have a generation of children who will speak with an Australian accent. So we're going to get some different words and different ways of speaking. But we should not, and I underscore that again, we should not. And I often say to people, you should be more Sean. Not Sean the sheep, but Sean Bean. Now, Sean Bean, he's proper Yorkshire, isn't he? Yeah, sharp, sir, and all that, sir. But he makes a fortune out of his voice. He makes more money than anybody else. So actually, maybe we should all learn the Yorkshire accent and start doing the voiceovers. But you can understand him, he's clear, but he has this Yorkshire accent. And it's so important that our children don't feel they have to speak like someone else to be heard. And that's, I think, for me, what Oracy needs to make sure, because we don't want a whole load of children like we used to have in the 70s who went to elocution lessons and they all sounded posh and a bit like the Queen. This is our work from RomLit when we did our editing session. And what was really, really the most fun for me is we've got these children telling us adults what needs to be changed. And our lovely illustrator, Michelle Russell, is actually making all the notes there, what the children say. And there is something there about that power balance. When you give children the power in something like this, it's actually their self-esteem goes through the roof. It's so important. Their confidence grows. And we just said before about speaking and listening and the confidence. It's about confidence. And I think RomLit has given our children a lot more confidence. And when they see their book, and we were talking today about having an extra page in the book. This is a kind of the mock-up we've been working with today. And we were talking today about having an extra page in the book and the fact that they would all be authors and they're going to have to sign their name. So they think, wow, great, but I gave them a task that they've all got to sign it a certain size to fit in. They've got weeks of practicing their name now, but they're not bothered because they're going to be in the book. And that's about writing for a purpose, to have something at the end of it. Okay, we'll finish with this. What's the biggest obstacles we face in EYFS? It's us, adults. It's us, because we listen to people who come out with stuff that we know is actually not good for our kids. We follow things blindly sometimes because somebody has told us to without even asking why. And it's so, so important that we question when somebody says, we're doing this, to say, well, why? Why are we doing that? It's so, so important that we say why. When somebody says to me and they say, well, we need to do this, and I think it doesn't sound right to me, whether working in the cultural sector or education, and I say, why? And then they'll go, or they'll explain it to me, and I'll think, yeah, that's why we're doing it. So let's just ask, with all these things we get tasked to do, let's just ask why. Why are we doing that? Because I think that's the biggest obstacle, is adults. So that's the end of my little bit there. Not little bit, it's an hour, isn't it? Probably seem like more to some people, but there you go. What we'll do now is I think we're going to have a Q&A, aren't we? So, and my colleague here, Spiros, is going to lead on that, I think. And we have got the most amazing thing, right? Now, I'm not a gadget person, right? But I love stuff that is useful, right? Nomadic people have always gone for useful technology. When caravans and cars and trucks came out, people got rid of the old wagons and they went for that. When the mobile phone came out, people were, this is amazing. And this, I can't remember seeing one. it's actually a microphone that I can throw to somebody, and you can ask the question. I mean, I'll throw it to you first, just to prove that it works.
Yeah, let's do that. It does work.
There you go.
It's picking it up. It's amazing.
I know. It doesn't take much, does it, to, you know, but we all work with children, so imagine having one of them in school for the kids.
This is creativity.
With rum lit round it. They'd love that, wouldn't they? Oh, we have to see if we can get one of them. They're probably mega expensive, so we might have to put yours in our bag.
Oh, no, I don't know about that.
Do we need the base for it as well?
We're good.
Right, okay. No, I mean for us to take later, not now.
What's your newest
Should we have a
blog?
sit? Should we have a sit?
Before we go to the Q&A, let's just give a big thank you to Richard.
Thank you very
What's
much.
your latest block?
That's fantastic, isn't it?
That's another block.
It's another block, isn't it?
Do you want to sit from here?
But if I actually made a block like this and threw it at people, then it would be serious, wouldn't it? Serious injury. So who's got a question for us? Who's going to go first? Because if you don't, I'm going to have to make up a question.
We have also got some questions on the Padlet, so don't panic.
Don't need you. Okay. Fantastic. Excellent.
We'll just see if there's any in the room first, but if not, we'll go to Jethro. Do you want to give us our first question? Yeah. Sorry, can I just point out, even if you have got a question in the room and you've got a booming voice, in order for the live feed to pick it up, it needs to come through one of the microphones.
Thanks, Helena. Yeah, one of the questions here came through more at the start of your talk when you were talking about listening a lot. And the question here is, it's interesting that listening is such a part of the talk. Why do you think listening is so overlooked as a vital skill? I noticed that the DFE English Research Review looked at speaking, reading and writing, but did not make mention of listening. How can we highlight the importance of listening when the people who should be leading education don't even value it?
Well, that is a really good question. So first of all, thank you for the question, and thank you for educating me about that, because I wasn't aware of that. How do we do that? I think we do things like this, and we have to get that across to people. I think because people just take it for granted that people are listening. And actually, if you work in a school, you will know that very often they're not. And one of the things about storytelling is you are constantly scanning your audience to make sure they are listening. And storytelling, as I said, isn't linear. It's actually multifaceted. So if you imagine we've got a kind of a weave of words going on, so if we lose children on one little bit, we hope to catch them with the other threads. So that's why it has to be. You know, they used to say that programs were better on radio. The pictures were better on radio. I think the pictures are better in stories. So when we're telling a story, we do need, and I think when you've got children, as we had yesterday, the story I told about the reception children, they were totally listening. But if we practice that and explain as we go with that, and we give them the idea. I think you're absolutely right. I think we have to practice listening. Now, I'm one of the worst guys. Thank God for sat-navs, because when I used to ask for directions, I would listen to like the third direction, and then my brain would just kind of switch off. I would end up asking 6 or 7 people down the line. So it is something that, and as a storyteller, listening is a vital skill for me, because that's where I get all of my ideas. That's where I get all of my inspiration from. So I think you're absolutely right. I think what we're teaching with our children is, with storytelling, is that this is an interactive thing rather than a passive thing.
And there's a disconnect there, isn't there? Because in the EYFS, speaking and listening are a prime area and something that's a real core focus of our teaching. Whereas when the primary, so the DFE research review is part of a curriculum kind of research review, and it's absolutely right. They have a section on speaking, a section on writing, and a section on reading, but not a section on listening. And again, they advocate for things like speaking in spoken, in standard English in our classrooms. So although we value the richness and the diversity, maybe that's not coming through in our curriculum policies that needs some adjusting.
And I think this is one of the brilliant things about having these events, is that, as I said to you, storytelling is a two-way thing. And you know, it's about that question, I've just listened to that, now I'm processing that. And I'm thinking, yeah, how do we now do that? How do I play my little part in that? Fascinating, thank you.
Any questions in the room? Or shall we go to we've got another one online?
I've got another one.
Yeah.
I have got another question online. It's another EYFS framework question. There's a real focus on vocabulary in the new EYFS framework. Do you think the focus on vocabulary is devaluing storying, narrative development?
No, I think it's a huge part of it. As I said before, I think the more words you know, the better stories you can tell, the more equipped you are. The project that we've been doing down in Birmingham, which is an ongoing project, where we're starting off talking about root words and about how many words in English come from different languages. And I think the more words you have, the better your vocabulary, the better everything. You know, when I'm telling stories or I'm talking to people about things, if I learn a new word, that's going in there. You know, it's a bit like food. It would be like just having, you know, egg and chips every day. But the more you have, the better, the more vibrant. The more words, the better. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that they should be more joined. Yeah.
And maybe that's a question we can also throw to our audience. I know we've got lots of kind of educators in here. Would you agree with Richard that the focus on vocabulary is supporting your children's storying and narrative telling, or do you feel that the focus on that is a little bit one-sided? Anyone willing to put a hand up and give us a thought? Excellent. Hold on. Spiros, do you want to throw the cube?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Come on.
You've got the cube.
Let's give it a go.
Oh,
Yes.
well,
Round of applause for that one, for surely.
I think from a school perspective, we have become very aware of how we teach vocabulary, and therefore the importance of giving them an opportunity to teach vocabulary. However, does it really translate into the storytelling they're using? And my question would be, as a result of that, is it to do with we are not doing enough of the oral storytelling to help them use it before they write?
Thank you for that brilliant question. I think it's the fact that we're not giving them the opportunity to do the oral storytelling. And I think the other thing is as well, as adults, we're not modeling it. Now, and I'll give you this example. I would say I can test the temperature of a school, not the actual temperature, but how people get on, by going into the staff room. I have heard the most amazing stories in staff rooms. You really go for it. It's like a pub with no beer sometimes. Brilliant. But we feel a bit more restricted when we're in the classroom. So I think if we can actually get that modeling of stories, give our children the opportunity to tell stories, because they do. They're amazing. But we have to model it as adults, and we have to just take that bit of time. It doesn't take long. I think when we were outside with reception children yesterday, I think we probably had 15 minutes tops. So it doesn't take long. And children love this idea of an ongoing story. You know, and you all tell stories. You tell them all the time. Everybody's a storyteller. You just perhaps need a little bit more confidence to tell your stories. And for the children for you to believe that the children will be interested in them. They're interested. I always say, what we do as storytellers, we take the ordinary, we always start with the ordinary, and we make it extraordinary. We did that with the blackboard yesterday. We did it in here this evening when we talked about the PowerPoint in the pub. PowerPoint's ordinary, pub's ordinary, we put the two together. Hilarious. You know, and each one of you could do a version of that story. Each one of you could do a version of the blackboard story. What I would like you to do is, when we have this book out, is I'd like you to show your children the book, read the book, but then actually tell stories about the book.
Can I come in? One of the most amazing and interesting things for me, working on the project with Richard and everybody else, has been going into schools And you know, because we're a project that we focus on Gypsy Roma and Travellers and early years literacies, but we haven't actually been doing that. We have been working with the entire school, with reception year 1 and year 2. So you've been talking a lot about breaking down, you know, this deficit, orthodoxy, the deficit, these courses and practices. What about, you know, this holistic way of working? We actually don't go in asking the teachers, can you pull out, you know, the GRT students, because this is what we're interested in. We don't do that. We work with everyone. So what's the story behind getting everybody on board? And Richard has been actually very, very clear that I want to work with the teachers and the teaching assistants. Nobody is excluded or elevated. So for me, that's been one of the most amazing parts of our story. Co-creating it and bringing everybody in. So would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I've always had this attitude that when I'm working with a school, am I bringing something to the school that when I take time from you, am I giving you at least something back to compensate for that time, or am I giving you more? Hopefully I'm giving you more. Because what sometimes happens is people will come in from outside into your school and say, oh, I want your children for an hour because I want to tick this off my box or whatever. And then actually you've had an hour taken out of your time. Afterwards you're thinking, well, what did we get out of that? What did our children get out? Oh, they thought it was funny, or they thought it was that, but where does that fit? So the whole point of this and working with Hilary and the team as well was to say, because she already had, you know, built up these relationships with schools, and say, what can we do that we bring in that would actually help the schools? So if we're gonna nick an hour off you, or we're gonna, you know, nick an hour and a half off you, are we bringing more to you than we're taking? And that to me seems a very fair way of going on. And then we're working with all the children. And then we're working with the teachers. And then we're working with everybody in the school. And it's fun. And that for me is where we're coming from. But that is what I was talking about before, where we have this kind of, what I would say, a nomadic way of working, which is very circular. If you look at any nomadic communities around the world back in the day, but even now, they follow the seasons. They go in a circle. We're not linear. Moving in a circle is so important. And I like that when we're working with these projects, for them to be circular, so that everybody can be involved, and we actually complete that circle, which is what we've done. So we started off with just going into the schools and saying, we're thinking about writing this book about a playhouse. What do you think it would look like? What shall we talk about? And then we build that. And then, we've nearly completed the circle. We'll complete the circle at the end of June when we go back in with the actual books and we get the children to sign one for us. Yeah. And it'll be probably the longest signing, because it's going to take about 28, 29 children to sign it. But it will be a special thing for me to have that signed book, and for other people who get them too. So it's a circular model. It has to benefit everybody. If it doesn't,
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
So I have a question then. So we've talked about the children and the richness of the conversations you're obviously having with them. Maybe Spiros or Richard, you can talk to us about what is the feedback you're getting from the teachers that you're working with?
Well, they say I'm brilliant. And
I expected nothing less.
Anybody who's good. But it's been, I know. And you know, they've said that you know, you're such a, there's a lot of humility there as well, they say. But I'll get Spiros to answer this, because, you know, he's been listening. I've been doing a lot, and he's been listening. And then maybe we could get Hilary to come in as well, because she's been having conversations. You know, we had that direct feedback when we were doing the editorial session with the head teacher, who just said, you know, this is amazing, this is fantastic, this is, you know, incredible writing for a purpose. I've enjoyed it. You know, the head teacher, because again, you know, poor head teachers often stuck in an office going through goodness knows what kind of paperwork. But to join us for that probably 45 minutes and be part of that, brilliant, wonderful. So I'll leave that to you, because you've been talking to teachers, and we'll bring Hilary in if we can as well.
Yeah, so it's been different things. I think the common thread is that they see themselves creating something with the kids. So there's a lot of pressure in schools. You know it better than I do. And there's a lot of, top-down impositions. There's a curriculum, there's a lot to cover, there's pressure from parents, there's pressure from many other stakeholders. I think the common thread is that through this work, they have been freed up. They have found some autonomy to create something new and tell the story like the way it happens, because there's no script. When you go in and you work with the kids, you can never script the interaction. You know what it's like, it's spontaneous, it's real, it happens in the moment. And I think the common thread is, getting moments of unfiltered interaction with the kids that leads to something. We had some moments of beauty this morning and yesterday, the whole day. I asked the kids, how do you feel being part of the story? And I said, really excited, happy, nervous, some of them as well. And I think, there is this this moments of reckoning for teachers. We've been spending all this time, helping you guys with the project. So for us, it's also given us some connection with the kids, some connection with the parents. We're standing at the gates of a school today, and they were telling us about for a school session they had a few weeks back with Rebecca, who's in the audience. And I said, I had some amazing things from my team. What has been like for you? I said, oh, have you seen the pictures? I said, put it in words. I said, I don't think I can. It's been amazing. Parents came over. The kids created the invitations for their own parents. Marginalization, not interest in education, I haven't seen that. No. So for them, I think it's taking back ownership, feeling that they're part of it. Creativity.
I'll just add to that. There's one more thing. While you were talking, I was thinking, and again, listening, and you're listening to people and you're thinking. And I think one of the things is that we do, it gives validation to the teachers. So when we're in the school and I'm saying, who can write their name? And all these hands go up and the teacher's like, yes, they can write their name. And bearing in mind, these children, they've only had them since September, and we were in there last year. And they're doing all these things. I think there's an incredible validation of you teachers, the work that you do when people like us go in, and we push the kids with the words and with the pictures and all that kind of stuff. And it's a huge validation of what you do, because you get used to it day by day. You've had them from September and you see it and it's incremental. But when outsiders come in and doing the work we do, and then, I can see the teachers sometimes standing there going, wow. We had it this morning when we had children come up and sit on the bench and they were talking about the book and they were reading from the mock-up book. And you could just see the teachers, they just went a little bit taller. And that's beautiful. That's your work being validated right there in real time. Hilary, is there anything that you would add?
Can we get the...
where's the cube? Who's got the cube?
Can we get the cube across to Hilary in the middle there?
Hilary.
Throw the cube.
Ready?
Go on.
Pretty much.
Oh!
I'm just going to kind of talk about a reflection yesterday, Richard, when we were in one of the schools, and you'd been talking with the Year 1 children and extending their use of words and making it real fun. And it got to a point where, for some reason, we had a repetition about a baby machine, pushing babies out through a baby machine. Do you remember that? Yes. And the children just went into absolute hysterics. They were falling over on the carpet. They were all over the place. And I said to the teacher, I said, look, look at what they're doing, all these kids, you know, they're all over the place. She said, well, if anybody can bring them back, she said, Richard will. So that was rather a nice reflection from yesterday, I think.
Well, thank you.
And you did, you actually pulled it right back in, you know, they kind of got back into their focus,
But
you know, in a different
I think
way.
what story does as well, it's a mutual respect.
Yeah, yeah.
Even from 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 2-year-olds, they get it. I think it's in our DNA.
Yeah.
I think they get it. I really do.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, just the, you know, I was chuckling all afternoon driving away from that school.
Yeah.
They just, the children, and the amazing work you do as teachers, teaching assistants, the children just lift your spirits. You know, I would say to anybody, if you think life is hard or you're having difficulty, just you know, go and work with some children like that, or just watch a video of some of the stuff. It's just incredible, absolutely incredible.
And I guess that's, I mean, that really highlights the importance, isn't it, of remembering why we're in this job. Because like you said, there is a lot of pressure, there's a lot of demands, there's a lot of policy changes, curriculum changes, things that can really tire us and bring us down as teachers. But we came into this profession for those little people. And sometimes it's just that reminder, isn't it, of the joy of working with those little people and seeing what they can do. Oh, it's a beautiful moment.
That was lovely. I'm thinking of a book now called The Joy of the Little People. That'd make a great book, wouldn't it? All the joyful experiences of teachers.
Have we got any other questions or comments in the room? I've got one over here, right? Let's send the cube across.
They're wary of that cube.
Yeah,
now,
wary a
aren't they?
little bit. Ooh, hands going up tentatively. Okay.
No catching. Richard, I really feel very inspired. Thank you very much. I want to ask a rather prosaic question to take you back to vocabulary building.
Could you just move it a little bit closer?
Yeah,
That's it.
and I've got a cough too, so I take you back to vocabulary building. I thought it was so interesting when you were talking about building vocabulary linking to other languages. And I really love that idea. I just wonder how you do it. Do you bring in Romani language? You do it in context of storytelling using different languages?
Bring in all kinds of languages. What's really interesting is when I'm working in Birmingham with this big school, and we've got a lot of children in there who are Hindi or Urdu speakers, and the Romani language comes from India. So when we say nark, they know it means nose, and can for ears. And when we count, you know, yek, dui, trin, star, punch, and theirs is more ikdo, but it's very, very similar. And then we start looking at all the words that come from that part of the world. You know, bungalow is one, pajamas, gymkhana. You know, we could go on. I mean, English as a language is very, very good at, shall we say, borrowing words from other languages. I mean, you know, we talked about this yesterday, didn't we? I mean, the maths, science, what would we be without the Greek language? We'd be stumbling around trying to think, and medicine, you know? But it's important for children to understand where words come from, and then they have fun with them. For me, it is about having fun with words, and seeing that words come from different places. Words come from different communities. You know, the word kushti is from the Romani language, and it's probably one of the most well-known words. And going back in the day when Only Fools and Horses was like #1 TV program, everybody was saying, you know, kushti Rodney. I speak London as well. Everybody was doing that. So, you know, that the words go round, and it's important that children know where words come from.
Great, thank you. And just a corollary, and do you think that schools feel confident in taking that sort of approach?
Some schools do. I think it needs to come from leadership to free up that time, to take that chance. And I'll give you an example from a school. So we're doing about root words, and we're doing all this wonderful work. And we invited parents to come in. And some parents came in, and we were working with children, year 3, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, all the way through. And then the parents would sit, if a parent came in, they sat on a table with their child, and they had QR codes on the table, so you could actually give your feedback on my workshop straight away. Thankfully, they all went pretty well. But then I go and see one of the leaders before I leave the school that day, and she says, oh, the feedback's fabulous, wonderful, excellent. She says, only one thing about it, this one here. And I said, well, I can't see what's wrong with it. It's very complimentary, actually, this person, this mother's saying that she's had a great time and she didn't know this about words and her daughter's done this and so. She said, 2 weeks ago, that parent sent me a 5-page letter of complaint. That's the magic of story. That's about, I think, bringing our parents in to see the amazing work you do and for you to see those parents in a different, people to see each other in a different light, in a different setting. That's what story does. That's what that interaction does. That's what Rebecca's work has done. People have gone away from that school seeing the school in a different way. Not just this place that sends out letters or texts. And then, you know, you don't see these people, the parents who just turn up and want to take their kids away, or they want to take them out early, or they want to do this or whatever. It becomes more human.
Thank you.
Another one at the back, I think.
Another question at the back, have we? Oh, yeah. Can we get the cue back there?
I'm really bad at phone.
There we go. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm here not as an educator from a social work perspective and thinking about the difficulties for the Gypsy Roma Traveller community. And I suppose my question is about what is Romlit doing for them? How many of the Gypsy Roma children have been involved in these projects, particularly when we know from the statistics they're not in your mainstream schools?
That's a really good question. Let me see. In terms of the creative and the artistic team, that is the people who are doing helping the children with the artwork in school, and myself obviously doing the literacy. I think we have got 5 people from Gypsy Roma Traveller backgrounds in that, which is incredibly high. And I totally get it because, you know, we talk about this, that it's now the time that we are doing these things, we are leading these things. So for me, that's really important. Oh.
Can I just say also that all the schools we worked in had quite high numbers of Gypsy Roma and Traveller children in those schools, didn't they? So
yeah.
They were very much included.
Is that okay for me to jump
Yeah,
in?
sorry, just to clarify for those on the feed. So the schools that you did work in actually had quite a high number of
Why they were chosen.
yeah, okay, thank you.
And I think the other thing about not just those Gypsy Roma Traveller children in the schools, seeing artists, seeing people coming in from their community, it's also about all the other children seeing that too. And what's interesting as well is also about we're coming from a university and showing that, you know, Gypsy Roma Traveller people go to university, work with universities, and any of those children could come to a university, whatever background they're from. And there was a really good, because you asked the question, didn't you? We were in a school in the early days, and Spiros asked the question, he said, do you know what a university is? And this child said, it's a school for grown-ups. Obviously haven't been, but really good answer.
Reception
Yep.
class.
School for grown-ups. I like that. That's another book.
They nailed it, yes.
Did you have a question?
I did. So I am a Romany traveller. I grew up on a site, literally moved into a house 10 years ago. Do a lot of outreach work on the site, still in Ipswich. A lot of the children there, they cut the traveller outreach education programme that they were attending as an austerity measure. A lot of those children then moved into mainstream education, but the racism and barriers they faced, a prime example I can give you is a child sent birthday invitations out to every child in his class. Not a single child attended his birthday party, so his mum withdrew him from school the next day. How are we reaching those children? What are we doing to support them?
Really good question. I know where you're coming from. I've been on the opposite end of that as an adult. Was booked to go into a school going back about 11 years ago, and there'd been an issue with some travellers passing through that particular village, nothing to do with me, I don't know who they are, and then the person from the school phoned up and said there are 12 adults who want to keep their children off when you're in that day, and gave me the option to cancel, which I didn't. I went ahead and did it, and actually it turned out there was only 9 in the end. But that's some of the levels we're dealing with. We have to redouble our efforts. We're doing this project here, and well done again on all the work that you're doing. There's a lot, we must never forget there's still a lot of work to be done. We're having a lot of success with this project, but there's a lot of work to be done. What I hope we can do with projects like this is actually to show, A, they work, A, they're being taken seriously by a university like this, and actually as a motivator or even as a prong to get other places to do them. So, you know, carrot and stick, hopefully. So what I hope that you take away from this evening, that this stuff is being done, and then maybe we can work together to do more stuff as well. So, yeah, because I know that area really well. I've got lots of relatives in that area. And I think we had some fantastic traveller education services, and then they got decimated. And we need to build that back up. And I think we are doing that slowly, but surely, and I think this is one of the steps. But thank you for that question. Really good. We must never forget that.
Yeah, no, seriously, we need to reflect on and address these critical questions. As a project, we spend a great deal of our time trying to build up these connections. And one of the things we've been talking about with the team is that we're not going to go in if we're not absolutely certain that we've got good connections there, that we work with the community, not for the community or on behalf of the community, but with the community. We haven't reached out far and wide. We have been building contacts and connections with specific communities. The work that Karen and Claire, who is also in the audience, right next to Karen down there, in Suffolk, in a different school, has been really, really amazing, an eye-opener. Should we have reached out to more communities? Yes, absolutely. And this is something we are very keen to carry on doing. The project spent a great deal of time trying, to get on its feet. The moment we did that, we were halfway through its life, and its funding is going to dry out at the end of July. So we're, I think, at a very good point in time where we can reflect on all of these issues, and we can start planning. And we're very, very keen to work with every single member in this audience and anybody who's listening online, and build further connections and address some of these real crucial issues. There's no blueprint. You know this better than I do. And we should never stop fighting for some of these barriers. We had it from families we've been working in. And we've also seen the flip side of that, families who wouldn't normally, go into the school and who wouldn't normally have, reached out. It would have been the school reaching out to them, but we have managed to get the families, to go into the school. We had an amazing, actually, incident last week in the school in Ipswich. There was this grandma having her grandchildren in the school, and she didn't speak English. That's fantastic. Let's put her at the center of this activity. And she was enacting part of the Stone Soup. The book is outside in the foyer. So, it takes a lot of work. Having somebody with no representation, no immediate connection, actually going into the school and being at the center stage is one of the best stories.
Can you just to answer that, can you make sure that you connect with us?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Romlit is clearly a start, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the key message there is, if you're interested and you want to connect and you want to help this team, then get in touch with Spiros. All the details are on our website, and I guess watch this space.
Yeah, definitely.
A big round of applause, and thank you very much for your contributions tonight. For those joining us online, thank you for being with us, and thank you for contributing via the Padlet. For those in the room, please do join us in the foyer for some drinks and nibbles.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Eleanor, for organising all this.
Absolutely. Superbly chaired.
Made possible.